La Habana, capital of Cuba, the Caribbean metropolis, which for many decades has been so little loved and so badly neglected. Breathtakingly restored beauty alongside unbelievable ruins. The Queen of the Antilles, in a country that lies between sun and socialism, between rumba and revolution. As early as 1553, the Spanish Conquistadors chose Havana's harbour as a rendezvous for ships that traded gold and silver in its colonies. To protect this gateway to the New World from attack by looters, several forts were built. Thus, Cuba's oldest fortress complex originated, the Castillo El Morro. It took 21 years to build this impressive fortification. Exhibits in the museum are a reminder that on the 29th of October 1492, Christopher Columbus landed on the north coast, on the island of Cuba, a contraction of the Indian name Kubanacan. They even had emergency food supplies. Founded in 1515, the Spanish conquerors named the settlement San Cristobal de la Habana. The population consisted of 40 Spanish families, 120 Indians, and 200 black slaves. The town, which lies in a natural harbour with a 200-metre wide entrance, soon became more important than the island's capital, Santiago. Following a decree in 1576, only stone buildings were allowed to be built, and the town was systematically developed. In the middle of the 17th century, the fortification work in the harbour was completed. The cathedral is located in the most beautiful historic square in the heart of the old town. Everywhere there is a strong sense of joie de vivre and friendly smiles that are irresistibly contagious. Close to noble old houses, high-spirited people enjoy the atmosphere of a cafe. Originally, the construction of a missionary church on a drained swamp was instigated by the Jesuits. The transepts and the Baroque facades were added later. The cathedral remained unchanged for centuries. The remains of Christopher Columbus lay here from 1796 until 1898. The Spaniards returned them to Seville at the end of their colonial reign, but they were later taken to Santo Domingo. As standards of living increased, pirates and buccaneers came here and repeatedly destroyed parts of the growing town. But each time they did so, the town was rebuilt and improved. Eventually, a city wall was added for additional protection. La Bodeguita Del Medio was once Hemmingway's local drinking place. Nowhere else is the Mojito mixed better. 3-year-old white rum, lime juice, soda, sugar, ice, and mint. There's a large array of portraits of some of the bar's most famous night revellers. Walls and tables are covered with scribbled writing, and the bar's legendary atmosphere is as good as ever. In a most beautiful colonial square, the Plaza de Armas, and in front of a small shrine, an old ceiba tree still grows, under which the founding of the town was celebrated. A small park with palm trees is surrounded by splendid buildings. Everything's been renovated and some things have been transformed, such as the Duke of Santoveña's palace that is now the luxurious Santa Isabel Hotel. Books and old newspapers are on sale, the prices of which can be negotiated. The freedom fighter Carlos Céspedes glances across to the Segundo Cabo Palace, which was built for the colony's highest-ranking government officials. The magnificently renovated colonial palace of the Captain General today houses the city's museum. Even here, in the shady interior, there's a further reminder of the discoverer, Christopher Columbus. On display in various rooms, there are extensive collections of statues, paintings, and furniture, including a collection of old carriages. The longtime companion of the conquistador Hernández Soto waited in vain for his return. She was called Guiraldilla. Castillo de Real Fuerza, 4 mighty bastions, surrounded by a moat and a drawbridge. It is the second oldest fortress in South America. This majestic fortress replaced a smaller one that was destroyed by the French Sores buccaneers, and in the 16th century was used by the Spanish governor as his seat of office. And in the fortress's courtyard, Cuban vitality welcomes the visitor. From here, the soldiers could see everything. They also stood in full view of the guards in the fortress on the other side of the river. La Habana, with its population of 3 million, is the capital, the heart of the island. An unbroken pulse in which the past and the present collide. Those who walk in the steps of the old lady will notice, however, that she has come of age. Her makeup is crumbling. World-weary, she sleeps. The journey continues past the newly adapted cruise ship harbour to the Plaza de San Francisco. The Lion Fountain dominates the centre of the refurbished square. The basilica and the adjoining monastery of San Francisco de Asís form one side of the square. For many years, this church was the most modern and elegant in the city. Today, however, it's used as a museum and concert hall. Everywhere there are small cafes where not only aromatic Cuban coffee is served, but where there's also a large selection of cigars and cigarillos from which to choose. Because the town had become so cramped in the 16th century, there was an attempt to expand it with the Plaza Vieja, the old square. The old city palaces around the plaza have constantly been rescued from ruin and still exist in their original form. Many houses in Habana Vieja originate from the days of Neo-Baroque, which is signified by portals, marble floors, and pillared walkways. Old-timers are inseparably connected with Cuba. Nowhere else in the world do so many classic vintage cars merge with the general traffic. One of the oldest churches in the city was built in 1638 by black slaves who'd bought their freedom, the Iglesia Espíritu Santi. Under King Charles III, the persecuted sought asylum here. Next to the altar is the stone gravestone of Pater Geronimo de Valois, who fought strongly on the side of the poor and underprivileged. His protective hand led the slaves. Old tombs are on view in the crypt. Also, the Necropolis de Colón was named after Christopher Columbus. Containing approximately 800,000 graves, this cemetery is one of the largest in Latin America. Here, wealthy families of the Sugar Dynasty, heroes of the Revolution, famous poets and intellectuals, were laid to rest. The contemplative peace of this huge area soon conveys itself to visitors. Its meditational squares and shaded promenades make the loss of loved ones more bearable. And it wouldn't be Cuba if shiny veteran cars didn't lose their way. Spires, Egyptian pyramids, imitation monuments, castles and Art Deco mini palaces compete with thousands of white angels carved from stone. Many of the tombs represent their creators' attempt to become eternal due to the originality of their designs. Close by is the Plaza de la Revolución, where to this day Fidel Castro offers his latest invective. The country's main military parade takes place here under the benevolent and protective gaze of Che Guevara. Ernesto Che Guevara studied medicine in Argentina, worked in Guatemala, and was then forced to flee to Mexico, where he became acquainted with Fidel Castro and annexed himself to the Cuban Revolution. The people loved and worshipped him. Although Havana is a busy, lively city, it doesn't seem to allow any signs of it to show. More than 2,000 workers created a true copy of its Washington role model, the Capitolio, seat of the Senate. The center of the building complex is crowned by a gigantic inner dome that is 94 meters tall. Tongue-in-cheek, precisely in the middle of its interior, a 24-carat diamond marks the fact that this location is 0 kilometers on the motorway to Santiago. Monumental hallways lead to numerous meeting rooms. The large assembly room is reminiscent of an ancient auditorium. Since the revolution, this has been the home of Cuba's Academy of Science, and it's also a geological museum. In front of the Capitolio is the beautiful Paseo de Marti Street, which is also called the Prado. With their home-built cameras, photographers wait for customers, and carriages wait around lethargically in the heat. On a street corner is the Teatro García Lorca, a magnificent building luxuriously decorated and adorned with small towers, the home of the Cuban National Ballet. Animal artists also wait for their fans, but the massive works of art are not always given the recognition they deserve. In the Parque Central stands the statue of the national hero, José Martí. Whether it be the Teatro Martí, the old tobacco factory, the famous Bacardi house, or the Floridita bar, everywhere there's a feeling of nostalgia. And when the daiquiri is served, one almost expects Fidel Castro or Ernest Hemingway to be seated at the next table. The Nacional Hotel, which was built in 1930 with mafia money and once accommodated prominent people from the film and business world, exudes nostalgic dreams of unmitigated pleasures. La Habana, a city whose riches once seemed boundless, now rests in sleepy magic and waits to be discovered once again.